Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. For day 23, we're heading down south talking about the Miami Marlins, who were third in the NL East with a record of 84-78. They had a negative 45 run differential. This team is overall a very young team, both with the bats and in the rotation. However, that's only going to allow them to continue to grow and develop and hopefully improve to make it further into the playoffs, or to make the playoffs and then get a little further into it. They are in a pretty tough division. I think they should be able to overtake a few teams here and there, but a wild card is likely going to be their best bet because it's going to be hard to beat the Braves. It's hard to beat the Phillies. We'll get to them in a minute. But in any case, let's go ahead and talk about the stat leaders. They were experienced guys. They were young guys. They were guys you wouldn't exactly expect. But let's talk about them. Brian De La Cruz led the team in at-bats, doubles, RBIs, and strikeouts. Jorge Soler led the team in runs, home runs, and walks, as well as slugging percentage. Luis Arias led the team in hits, go figure, was in a 5-way tie for triples, total bases, average, on-base slugging, and on-base percentage. So very typical for this guy to be the leader in some of those categories. And then finally, stolen bases goes to Jazz Chisholm. Now, the historic run for 400 died June 24th, as that was the last time Arias had a 400-plus batting average. 350 plus is not anything to scoff at. However, other than batting average, which impacts your on-base percentage and your on-base plus slugging simply because your on-base percentage is so high, that's really all he has to offer. So it's cool. However, I think the coolest stat he has is the fact that he had over 600 plate appearances and only struck out 34 times. That's pretty awesome. Now going from one guy stellar in one stat to another guy stellar in one stat, or was supposed to be, John Berti. This man was a stolen base monster in 2022 and then fell off the face of the earth. Even though we thought everything was in his favor, he had every opportunity to be the next Ronald Acuna. Esteury Ruiz. He was going to be the stolen base guy in fantasy leagues. He ended up with 16 last year. He dropped from like 40 plus down to 16. That's disappointment. What happened? Too much expectation? Too much anticipation? Too much pressure? Was he overwhelmed? I don't know. But other stolen bases, he has nothing left to offer. That's unfortunate. Something else is unfortunate, that Brian De La Cruz is being overlooked as the third Cruz in the league. This guy led the team in several categories, including at-bats, doubles, RBIs. He also led in strikeouts. But that's beside the point. I don't think anyone's going to be upset with an additional 78 RBIs from a guy who might be a third or fourth outfielder for your team. Again, I don't think anyone's going to be upset with that. He had double-digit home runs as well. Again, that's production out of a guy that you may not have even heard of unless you're a Marlins fan, or had him in fantasy or went against him in fantasy and he did something good or bad. Something else to talk about when it comes to overshadowed guys, Josh Bell. He improved his numbers from when he was playing in Cleveland to when he was playing in Miami. And if the Marlins can get that same guy who finished with a 270 batting average, 11 home runs, 26 RBIs, and 20 walks. Now, the strikeouts weren't great with 53, but he played in 53 games. So those 11 home runs came in 53 games. That's pretty good. So if you multiply that by 3, number of games in the season, you're looking at 30 plus home runs. That was just what he did in Miami. He came over with a few home runs already, but Josh Bell, if he can hit 4th in the lineup, maybe 5th, he could definitely add to these numbers. And I'm thinking he could potentially be another deep option for you at first, or DH, if you already have a first baseman, because it's a very deep pool. But Josh Bell, better than what we're really giving him credit for. Someone else who's better than we're giving him credit for, Jake Burger. I like to call him Jake Booger, but Jake Burger. Some things changed when he came over from Chicago. He was batting .214, had 25 home runs. However, when he came to Miami, he only had 9 home runs the rest of the season, but he had a .303 batting average. So if you can get right there, nice in the middle, and if he can keep up his plate discipline, he's looking at 30 home runs, maybe 40 home runs. Actually, no, wait, 40 or 50 home runs, looking at 100 plus RBIs and a 260, 270 batting average. That's a great third baseman. I mean, you have some options there. very first off, you have De La Cruz, the stolen bases, you have Rafael Devers, you have Nolan Arenado. But if Berger can get those types of numbers and show that, hey, I'm not just a flash in the pan, you could absolutely have someone down there at third, Miami Marlins. Overall, I find that there's a lot of good options in this lineup. One of them I'm not a fan of, Jazz Chisholm. He missed a lot of time with injuries, and he still led the team in stolen bases. So he's talented, but I'm not a fan of him. He was on the cover of MLB The Show, and I don't know why. He beat out a few other guys, and I don't understand why, but the Marlins have some talent. They have some guys who are going to be able to do good stuff for them if they're positioned properly. And I'm talking not having Jazz Chisholm as the cleanup hitter. Have Jake Berger, have Josh Bell. Make sure you're putting your guys in position to succeed. That's the biggest thing for any coach, any team. Talking about setting yourself up for a good position moving forward, the pitching rotation for this Marlins team is looking pretty good. They have some options there that showcased their talents last year. They had some guys who are young and going to be able to grow and develop. They may not have been all that in a bag of chips this past year, but again, improvement is improvement is improvement year after year. Just keep doing it. So let's go ahead and talk about the stat leaders. Innings and losses. Sandy Alcantara, what a fall from grace. We're going to talk about him in a second. Game started, quality starts, wins, and strikeouts, Jesus Luzardo, and finally, whip and ERA, Yuri Perez. Then we get to hold, Tanner Scott, who is now the closer, and we get to saves, AJ Puck, who is now a starter, which is kind of crazy. I like this bullpen. I like this starting rotation. There's definitely some talent there. However, they might be onto something, and I'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about Yuri Perez. This rookie sensation, like I said, was great. He was coming in with a sub-3 ERA, a pretty respectable whip, and he was winning, or at least putting the Marlins in position to win games. However, faltered a little down the stretch because he had several innings on him from minor leagues, so they did monitor his workload. He was given extra days off, sit down to the minors, come back up. So Yuri Perez, absolutely going to be someone to look forward to. However, he's dealing with some injuries right now. So he's not going to be ready for opening day, but that's not new. And unfortunately, that's kind of the thing for the starters in the Marlins organization. Braxton Garrett is also a young guy who is not going to be ready for opening day, working his way back from an injury, and he also did great. He's had 2 great seasons under his belt with a mid-3 ERA and a 1.15 to 1.25 whip. So this guy is absolutely going to be a pace setter, really, for this team. He's not sexy, he's not flashy, but he's consistent. Another young guy, Edward Cabrera. His first year, 22 looked a lot better than 23. However, he pitched more in 23. There were some glimpses of some good stuff with him. He is striking out more than a player an inning, which is great. But the important thing is he gets healthy. Talking about health, Sandy Alcantara had a phenomenal, amazing 2022. 2.28 ERA, sub-1 whip, had 14 wins, 228 innings pitched. He had just over 200 strikeouts. Phenomenal. Hard to beat, but even harder to beat when you're in need of Tommy John surgery. So he pitched all the way up until September for the Marlins, ended up having to have Tommy John surgery. 4+ ERA, 1.3 whip. So he just wasn't the same. And maybe that fatigued him. 2022, maybe that fatigued him. But he was phenomenal. He is someone that is going to come back and be part of this young rotation. I keep hyping up this rotation, especially moving forward, because at this point in time, between Braxton Garrett, Yuri Perez, Jesus Luzardo, and Edward Cabrera, they're all 26 or younger. Alcantara is only 28. These guys, if they stay together, if they continue to improve, watch out NL East. Watch out National League in general. This team is going to be good. The bullpen is going to also help them. They have a few key pieces, but the main piece is Tanner Scott. This guy is lights out. He's played on some bad Marlins teams. He's played on some decent Marlins teams. Now he's going to get a chance to be the closer. He had chances before, blew them. There were a few other guys they brought in specifically to be the closer. David Robertson last year, AJ Puk a few years ago, but now it is Tanner Scott's team. Led the team in holds last year and will likely lead the team in saves this year. Overall, the team's good. They brought in some guys that are going to make them better, potentially, but they lost some guys who might hurt. So let's talk about the arrivals. Tim Anderson, I don't think he's going to help him much. Maybe he will, but his bad attitude, I don't know. Jurickson Profar, this fella is versatile. He's been around a while. He can play lots of positions, but when he gets hot, he goes on these streaks and he's good. Vladimir Gutierrez. Now, you might not have any idea who this guy is. He had a pretty good 2021 with the Reds. He won 9 games. 2022 was very ugly. And 2023, I don't think he pitched in the major league. So they brought Gutierrez in. I don't know what he's going to do. He might just be depth for him, which will be nice, especially with the injuries that they already have. But in any case, the last guy they brought in, Ryan Weathers. Nothing sexy there, really. Nothing. He's a pitcher. I don't know what he's going to do. Guys, they lost. Jorge Soler. That is a bat that's going to be missed big time. He was like a version 2.0 of Marcell Ozuna. Lots of home runs, lots of RBIs, lots of strikeouts. But fella could get you some production. So, and then Sandy Alcantara, I think that's going to be a pretty big disappointment for them. Regardless of how bad he had his season was last year, he was still good enough to be a starter in the major leagues. And also, you have to look at what he did in 2022. He was great. Now, let's see if we can get back to that next year when he comes back. We'll see. But again, this rotation will be the reason they make the playoffs. That does it for the Miami Marlins. We leave Florida tomorrow and go up to Philadelphia to talk about the Phillies. Looking forward as the Soul Series opens tomorrow, and then opening day is just over a week away. This is Jake Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.